So this week, as you know, I do some work to put gas in the car with the Board of Elections. And this week, even though the election was like almost 2 weeks ago, I'm one of a team they call in to. Sometimes you have questions. How do we know that machine that counts the ballots counts it right? And we do a thing called auditing or canvassing to make sure you count different races. The state will pick which race and which precinct, or they'll do a whole county with which race they want to count. And we count those by hand. We literally count those by hand. And so we were counting some ballots, and there was a race for county commissioner, and they wanted us to count the write-ins. And so I got the precinct that I actually live in. I've never voted in this precinct, but I live there, and that's where my ballot would be attached to that precinct. So I'm counting the write-ins. I'm going through ballots, counting the write-ins, and there's a Republican and there's a Democrat, and we work together as a team, and it's just great. And so I'm counting the write-ins. Well, I come across this one ballot, and it had, on the school board, it had 2 people marked, but then it had 2 write-ins. The first name was Earl Ty. Earl Ty. As you might know, Earl Ty is Jonathan, my son-in-law's father. And the second name was Rodney Cheney. And so, because legally I cannot take a picture of the ballot, and I asked, because that was going to be my welcome. And he said, "No, you can't do that." I said, I know I can't, but there's proof there. So you know where my mind went. Okay, who did that? Who did that? That's got to be somebody, because I know what precinct they lived in. I know what precinct they came. So Gail comes over there, and we're gonna meet for lunch. And I said, "Gail, and look, how you vote is your private. I want to say that is the only way somebody can run down your ballot is if you vote early, and it takes a lot of work, but people can get to your ballot. But how you vote is private, except not this morning. Not this morning." So Gail comes in, and I said, "Gail, look, you'll never believe it. Look at here. My name and Earl's name's on this ballot." She said, "Oh yeah, Pat Kavanaugh did that." And I said, "Oh yeah, he told me that, and I completely forgot it." So that's now somebody else will get upset with me. You told people how I voted. So anyway, so I just didn't see that coming. I just did. Yeah, I know. That's you get that for the welcome. Didn't see that coming. So this morning we want to talk about getting to 2020, getting to see things clearly. I was getting ready to title this, I can see clearly now, but I'd have to sing the song to you. The rain is gone. All the obstacles that were in my way are no longer there. Gone are the clouds, but now I can see clearly now. Well, this morning, I hope as we look at this passage that you will be able to see clearly. It's 3 stories, really. 3 stories told. And the idea is centered around 2 different towns this morning. And maybe you will meet someone in this story. Typically we don't hear what I'm getting ready to teach you this morning. And the reason why is we take these stories in isolation. But what I've been trying to do is go through, and I can't divine the mind of Luke, but I want to see what clues are Luke giving me. And when you take it by the book, you keep looking at these little clues that he gives you to say, this story is connected with this story is connected with this story is connected with this story. And you see the connection. Hopefully you'll see that this morning. If you have your Bibles open to Luke chapter 18. And last week we looked at a Pharisee and a sinner that were in the temple, and a story told about them, and they were praying. And then we looked at the little children coming to Jesus with arms wide open. And then we looked at a rich man who said, "I'm very religious. I've done all these religious things." But he walked away because he had great wealth and he wanted to trust in his wealth. Well, now Jesus takes his disciples aside, and I want you to see the city that Luke puts in there. He wants to remind us, because Since Luke chapter 9 and verse 51, we've been aiming toward this city. And this city is less than a week away in the narrative. We're getting ready to approach the city. Let's look. Luke chapter 18 and verse 34. And taking the 12, he said to them, see, we are going up to Jerusalem. And when he says we're going up to Jerusalem, Jerusalem is about, from where he's saying this, about 17 miles. And it's about a 3,000-foot incline to go from where he is up to Jerusalem. He is not far from the Jordan River, what we would call today, I guess, the West Bank, right above the Dead Sea, and he's getting ready to go to Jerusalem. He's trying to shape their minds and shape their thinking about this, because he's been telling them all along about his mission, and they've been thinking about it a certain way. And everything he's told them, they've received in a certain way. And so he makes it as clear as he can that everything written about the Son of Man by the prophets will be accomplished. Jesus is not going to do anything new. He can't say, now I've got a new plan. All of that Old Testament stuff, we're changing. We're going to do something different. He can't do that. He's got to fulfill the law. And he says, the prophets have said this would be accomplished. For he, the Son of Man, will be delivered over to the Gentiles. The Gentiles will now be in control. And just saying that, it's like, oh man, no, that's not what we want. We want a Jewish king. We want a Jewish nation. We want the Jewish rule. That part of the Old Testament is what we want to know about. And he says, for he will be delivered over to the Gentiles and will be mocked and shamefully or mistreated and spit upon. Here's the way that he's going to be treated by these Gentiles. The Son of Man, who Daniel had talked about, rides on the clouds, is going to be mistreated this way. And then he goes on and he says this, and after flogging him, they will kill him. No, that's not the way this story's supposed to work. That's not the way I had it envisioned in my mind. That's not the way my daddy told me this would be. From the time I was young, I knew that the Son of Man would come. He would come with authority. And that we would rule. We would be out from under Roman rule. And he says, but he's going to be killed. Jesus is telling them. And on the third day, he will rise. It says, but in spite of this information, they understood none of these things. And he goes on to say this saying was hidden from them, and they did not grasp. They couldn't comprehend what was said. So we get to this point, and these guys just can't see. They just can't see it. They can't put it into their frame of reference. There's no place to say, this doesn't fit. This doesn't fit into anything in the Old Testament the way we have read it. But we're heading to Jerusalem. We're heading to Jerusalem. Passover is coming. And people are coming from all over to come to Passover. And he says, when we get there, I just want to prepare you. When we get there, it's going to be like this. And they're going, we know a little bit better than that. Because Jesus is popular. And Luke ends up going and telling two different stories. And I want you to watch the change of venue here. And it's not really a change of venue as much as he's letting us in on the venue. Let's go to the next verse. This is the next story. As he drew near to Jericho. So he's drawing near to Jericho, and the next story happens in Jericho. Now, before we go on, let's just think about Jericho. What do you know about Jericho? Well, you know that Jericho, Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, and he marched around, and the walls came down. And I can tell you personally, being in Jericho, it was like 106 degrees when I was there. Literally, it was like I'm taking a screenshot of that. It was hot. The other thing we know about Jericho, it's like a mile and a half from where Jesus was baptized. When the children crossed, from being in the wilderness for 40 years, they crossed over right there at Jericho, the same place Jesus was baptized. Very interesting. That's not by accident. That's not by accident that Jesus, once he'd been in the wilderness, before he started his ministry, would be baptized at the very place where the nation crossed over. It's just right outside of Jericho. There are other things about Jericho. In the winter, even though it's only 17 miles, because of its low sea level. I mean, it's below sea level. It gets very hot. And Herod the Great had a palace there. Now, the first time I went to Israel, this wasn't even on the radar. The second time I went with a group, and we did crazy things. Crazy things like go to historical places that were not really on the map yet. And the first time we went, this place I'm getting ready to show you was a dump. And when I say a dump, I mean there were garbage bags everywhere. But remember, it used to be Herod's palace. I want to show you some pictures. And here you can see they're walking down. There's these colonnades there. If we were to look to the right, there would be this big gulp. And if I were to describe this palace, it was his summer palace. In fact, Herod died here. This is where he died. And then he was transported to the Herodium, which is near Bethlehem. And that's where his body was on display, and they had the parade and everything. But he died here at this palace. All right, let's go to another picture. That's not Lee and Teresa. Yes, it is on the left. I told them they were making the sermon this morning. But I want you to notice something. See how those diamonds, how that brick is laid in there, how that was shaped and put in there. That's the Italian influence. Herod wanted the things from Italy, the Italian craftsmanship. And so these walls are crafted like that. Now, this is in 2017. In 2016, when I went, it was a dump. Trust me, it was a dump. Now, I hadn't been back since 2017. It's probably something they charge people to come see. This is in 2016 when I was there the first time, and the garbage is over there on the left, but I didn't take a picture of the garbage. I can take a picture of garbage anywhere. And then go, and I'll show you another one from 2016. That right there, this is a sauna. This is a bath that they would have, a steam bath. They went over a gully with a bridge, and so there was a river coming through there, and they would go over this creek or river, and this palace was just immaculate. And people had used it. The Hasmonean kings had built a place there, and then Herod leveraged it and kicked it up a notch, and he loved to stay in Jericho. So it was a place. It was a happening place. It was like, okay, we've got a few days. Let's get away. We might consider it something even like Las Vegas. I mean, I've never been to Las Vegas, but a place where things were happening. So it was a city that it was a city with some history. And I think that's important. And at the end of the sermon, we're going to come back to that, because we tend to think the events in the Bible happen just by happenstance. Let's just put it anywhere. But when I say something like Pearl Harbor, there's something attached to that. When I say something like Gettysburg, there's something attached to it. They're not just places on a map. There's geography is attached to events. So we're in Jericho now, and these next two stories are in Jericho. Let's look at the story. And it's interesting here that it says, Luke says, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. We actually know his name, Bartimaeus. And the reason we know his name is because Mark tells us his name. But Luke says you don't need to know his name. Luke says his name's not important. Did Luke know his name? Probably. If Mark was written first, he probably would have known, hey, his name's Bartimaeus. Why did he leave it out? Because he's trying to show you this guy's a nobody. This guy doesn't have a name. He says he's a blind man, and he's sitting on the roadside. And hearing a crowd going by, he inquired what this meant. What's everybody? Is there a parade? Herod's been dead for 34 years. Why is everybody excited? What's going on? And they told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus of a common city is passing by. And he cried out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. No, you got the wrong guy. This is Jesus of Nazareth. This blind man saw him differently. This blind man saw him differently. He saw him as Jesus, son of David. What does that mean? Jesus, son of the ruler, son of the king that's promised. From the Old Testament, we know that he is going to establish a throne, and his throne is going to be forever. That's a promise that God made to David. And here's David's son. Have mercy on me. And those who were in front of him, rebuked him, telling him, be quiet, you're embarrassing us. And when they did that, but he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. He's yelling and he's screaming. And you know what there is in his voice? Desperation. There's desperation. In this person whom we don't know his name, all we know is that he's blind. But he sees something about Jesus. He sees he's more than Jesus from Nazareth. He is Jesus, Son of David. And so he goes on, and here's what he says. And Jesus stopped. The thing that stopped Jesus in his tracks, and the thing that stops Jesus in his tracks today, is anyone who calls on him. He's never too busy. His agenda is never too much that he can't stop to those that call on him. And this guy sees Jesus for who he is, even though he's blind. Jesus stopped and commanded him to be brought to him. And when he came near, he asked him, what do you want me to do for you? And he said, Lord, let me recover my sight. So evidently this is someone who used to be able to see, and now he's lost his sight. I don't know how long ago he had lost it, but he had lost his sight. And he knew what it was to have the beauty of being able to see. He said, let me recover my sight. And Jesus said to him, recover your sight. Your faith has made you well. And so he could not only see spiritually, but now he could see physically. That's a little bit of a contrast. He could understand, he could see, he could, we use that term when we'll use a lot of times see. I see, meaning I understand. The disciples who've been with Jesus and traveled with him for 3 years, they didn't understand. They didn't doubt what he said, but they just didn't understand. They didn't put it together. This guy says, I see. I see he's the Son of David. And immediately he recovered his sight. And what does he do? He follows him. He follows Jesus and he glorifies God. And that had a result on this crowd. All the people, when they saw it, they gave praise to God. They knew that for this guy to see, it had to be something more than just a recovery. It had to be a miracle. And they gave praise to God. Here's a beggar that people want to shut up, that people want to they don't want to feel the embarrassment, because Jesus is a big deal and he's got people coming, crowds are following him now. But Jesus is merely going through Jericho. He knows where he's going to, and that's Jerusalem. Well, as he gets to Jericho, we have another story. In this story, he entered Jericho and was passing through. And this is a story we've heard if you've grown up in church since you were wee little. And behold, there was a certain man. Now we know this man's name, Zacchaeus. This is the only, in the 4 Gospels, this is the only place this story is told about Zacchaeus. And he tells us, he said, not only tells us his name, but he tells us his status. So we know that in Jericho there are people that without names and with no status. And all they have is need after need after need. Here's a guy just on the opposite end of the spectrum. In fact, this guy, his name was Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. He was not only a tax collector, but he was over the tax collectors. And being in that position had meant he had accumulated a lot of wealth. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was. He wanted to see Jesus. Why? If you were there, if you and Zacchaeus were sitting around talking after playing 18 holes, and you're sitting around talking, you would say, Zacchaeus, why are you worried about this Jesus guy? Well, you got everything you could want. You've got name. Everybody here knows you. Not many people like you, but everybody here knows you. You've got wealth. People, when family come and visit Jericho, they drive by your house so they can see, this is where Zacchaeus, this is where tax collector. Look, he's doing something wrong. Look at how big that house is. Look at how beautiful that house is. It's one of the sights. If we had Christmas, you would decorate and people would come. You are a main attraction. Why do you want to see Jesus? Why do you want to seek him out? Because Zacchaeus knows something we all know. We all know that there's got to be more. There's got to be more than wealth. There's got to be more than status. There's got to be more than a name. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not see. There's too many people there. Because he was small in stature. He was a wee little man. And a wee little man was he. He was small in stature. So he ran on ahead. Now, once you see that, you just remember, if we go back to Luke 15, the father who was waiting for his son, and when he saw his son afar off, he runs to him. You did not see older men. You could see children run, but you didn't see older men run. They just didn't do it. It was improper. I've told people, if you see me running, you better run because somebody's chasing me. And they could very well chase you too. You just didn't do this. He was small in stature, so he ran on ahead and he climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. He gets ahead of the crowd, he runs, but he climbs up in a sycamore tree. Now I want to show you the sycamore tree that he climbed up in. Not really. That's the way they sell it. But this was 2,000 years ago. It's not there today. Let me show you a couple. So that was a good-looking guy right there. And I was going to climb the sycamore tree, but they wouldn't let me. They had it gated off. This is about a 60-foot sycamore tree, and I've got another picture of it. And you can see the limbs are pretty low. And you just can see Zacchaeus climbing up in that tree, being between there. Looking, wanting to see Jesus. You know, he wants to be in, but he doesn't. He wants to be far enough away, and it's kind of like he wants to hide. He could hide up in those bushes, but he could see everything. He climbs up in a tree just like that. And now he's going to kind of get the show. And all the limitations of his height, all the limitations of the crowd, they're not going to bother him because now he's in that tree. Not that tree. Oh yeah, I went to a church and the pastor showed me the very tree that Zacchaeus. But a tree like that. This is a sycamore tree. Let's go back to the text. I think I only had two of those. I only had two pictures from. Yeah, I only had two. So he ran on ahead, climbed up into the sycamore tree to see him, but he was about to pass by that way. And now look what Jesus does. And when Jesus came to the place, so the idea here is Jesus walks up to the tree. And he looks up. He came to the place, he looked up, and he said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry down. Hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. A tax collector coming down. It's very interesting. That word where he says, and he looked up, Jesus seeing him, it's the same word in our previous passage where sight, the very word for sight, pops up 3 times and it pops up here. Zacchaeus is seen. Zacchaeus is trying to hide. Zacchaeus is trying to taste the sample without having to be exposed to, that's the way you're. I know how you are when you're in Sam's and Costco and they're passing out free sample. You don't want to hear the sales pitch. Just give me the free thing and let me move on. Zacchaeus wants to do that, but Jesus just narrows in. He's coming. Oh my, he's here. And Jesus stops and looks up. The second time Jesus stops. What could make Jesus stop from going to Jerusalem? Only a person that needs him. Only a person who's open to him transforming his life in a way he might not have ever dreamed imaginable. So he says, Zacchaeus. How did he know his name? If there was somebody that was despised in that town, it was that guy. How did he know his name? He says, I'm going to your house. The best way I can illustrate this, of the way this feels, is in the 10th grade for PE. We didn't have anything to do. It was a spring afternoon, and we're all sitting in the bleachers. And the most famous athlete in our community, in our area, he was a professional football player, came in to the field and started talking to my PE teacher. And what other people didn't know that I knew is he and I knew each other. And the reason we knew each other is because his brother used to babysit me. Their backyard and our backyard ran into each other. But he was a few years older. And so the teacher said, hey, Rodney, come down here. And so in front of, this really helped with the girls. In front of all the class, I'm out on the football field throwing football with a person who is an NFL pro football player, a running back for the Washington Redskins. And it's like, wait, why him? Why that skinny little runt? Why do we, And so he said, come down. We got to go. The whole idea of when Jesus, out of this whole crowd, out of this whole city, he says, Zacchaeus, I'm going to your house. Now, I know what you're thinking. People are sitting there going, hey, I know Zach. Yeah, nice house too. I know Zach. That's not the way they responded. They didn't respond to it. Look at what he said. So he hurried down and came and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they grumbled. They all grumbled. He, Jesus, has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner. He's a sinner. And you know why I know he's a sinner? Because what he does as a tax collector. You know how I know he's a sinner? Because he's got more than I have. You know why I know he's a sinner? Because he's not me. He's different. And the crowd grumbled. Look at the way this crowd's acting. Look at the way that everybody's joining in. First of all, they shut down the blind man. Shh, be quiet, be quiet. And when it says grumble, that's not like, that's like, hey, it's done loud enough so Jesus knew exactly what they were saying. You know how you say something and you keep it just low enough, but you definitely want people to hear it and say, what's that? Oh, nothing. They wanted him to hear it. Maybe Jesus doesn't know who this cat is, but he said he's going to his house, and they're upset. He goes on from there. And he says, and Zacchaeus stood and said, so after they're home, there's a break between verse 7 and verse 8. After they're at his house and Jesus have communicated, Jesus is looking toward Jerusalem. Jerusalem is going to be the payoff. Jerusalem's what's happening. But he stops and he heals a blind man and he goes to Zacchaeus' house. And they talk and I don't know what they talked about. But they talked, and Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, the half of all my goods I give to the poor. And if I've defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. He's a son of Abraham. And then it says, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. Now, I just kind of want you to think about something real quick. Is that a salvation message? And what I mean by that is that message giving half of what you own to the poor a way a person can get into heaven? If somebody were to ask you, how can I make sure that when I take my last breath, I end up in the presence of God? How can I make sure of that? Well, let me tell you. Luke 19, verse 8, the way Zacchaeus did it was he just said, give half to the poor. Just something to think about. And I know this is not popular, but just something to think about. Could it be that Zacchaeus, because of his curiosity and everything, at some point already believed in Jesus? Okay, I'm going to get in trouble now. I had a friend in this church, and we were going out to lunch, and he gets in the car, and he says, Franklin Graham. This is going to get me in so much trouble. And he said, Franklin Graham. I love Franklin Graham. But I'm not sure he knows how to tell people to get to heaven. He said, he posts something, and he says, you got to do this, you got to repent, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And I said, he would have been better off to not confuse people. Just to put John 3:16. John 3:16 is enough. Whoever believes in him has everlasting life. This is not what delivered Zacchaeus into the family of God. It delivered him somewhere, but not into the family of God. How is one delivered from the kingdom of darkness to the kingdom of life? By belief. How does one come into God's family? By belief. But he's sitting here and he's saying, hey, I'm going to give half my goods. Remember our purpose in Luke. Luke's different from John. Whenever Luke uses salvation, in fact, I'd go so far as to say you need to be careful when you're reading Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Because they're writing to people who are believers, who want to understand and grow. What was holding Zacchaeus back from being all he could be for God was his trust in his wealth. And after talking to Jesus, he said, I don't need to trust this anymore. I don't need to trust this. He said, if I've wronged anyone, if I've defrauded anyone of anything, I'll restore it fourfold. He's talking about more than the law required. The law required for you to make it up plus 20%. He's going 400%. If I've wronged anyone. He's in a tough place. But he's just met Jesus, and Jesus has transformed his life. For the very first time, Zacchaeus sees. And Zacchaeus sees it's not about the title, and it's not about the job, and it's not about the security, and it's not about the home, and it's not about the wealth. And he is willing to bank it all on Jesus. Jesus is willing to come into focus. Zacchaeus at this point, I think, gets 20/20 vision about who Jesus is, who he is. And he begins to live up to his potential of being a son of Abraham. Because he says, he also is a son of Abraham. Bartimaeus regains his sight. The disciples are sitting there. They don't exactly know what's going on. We just can't comprehend this. Bartimaeus, I shouldn't use Bartimaeus, but the blind beggar, he regains his sight. Zacchaeus gets something. He's had Jesus with him for an afternoon. He's had a meal with him. And now he wouldn't trade that for anything. But there's another person that's involved in all this. And it's the person going along with everybody else. It's the crowd. The crowd tells others to shut up. The crowd tells people to grumbling against what Jesus is doing. And I don't know if the crowd sees. I don't know if they understand. You know, it's interesting, our video clip. Johnny English, a.k.a. Mr. Bean. He's trying to escape the bad guy. He's got his hands tied behind his back. He can control the gas and all. But the new driver, they number one, they don't know their right from their left. Turn right. Turn left. For future reference, I am on your left. But he has to solve the problem. He has to do something drastic. And he goes after the very thing we would never think he would go after. The person's glasses. Well, let's take their glasses off. Well, now they really can't see. But maybe it was that thing that was holding them back. Maybe it was the crutch, the thing they were leaning on to see so they could make sense of everything. Maybe when that's taken away, then, okay, I have to rely on your voice. I have to listen closely to your instructions. I have to. And while the disciples don't see it yet, the blind man sees it, and he follows. And Zacchaeus, the glasses are taken off, and it's no longer about his height. It's no longer about a tree or his wealth or his possessions. Now he wants to listen to the voice of God. Now he wants to see. Now he wants to see, and he wants to see clearly. And I just think sometimes in our lives, we're hanging on things and we're trying to navigate this life and trying to navigate this world as best we can. And we're leaning on those things that they kind of help us get through, but not really. And it still leaves that ache and that hole. And maybe we've trusted Christ as our personal Savior. We've believed in Him for life. And Jesus wants so much more. He wants for us so much more. And maybe it's the very thing that we're leaning on that He wants to take away so that we can finally lean on Him. so that we can finally trust Him fully. Because the bad guys are after us. The bad guys want to see us fall. But Jesus wants so much more for us. He wants us to have 20/20 sight. The road through Jericho reveals the heart of Jesus. He seeks those that are not tracking with Him. And He restores those who have rejected Him. So, in the midst of everything in your life, in the midst of the crowds, in the midst of, hey, you know, in this city, we're known for this. This is where Herod the Great's palace is. I almost forgot. I want to end with this. Remember I told you the history of that city, wall of Jericho coming down. The spies, we could go back 40 years earlier, but the spies that went in, they talked to this woman, this lady of the night, Rahab. And Rahab's last name was the harlot, is what we typically, Rahab. And she asked them to make a promise. She hides the spies and she asked them, how will I know? And I want you to see this verse, Joshua chapter 2, verse 14. And the men said to her, our life for yours, even to death. If you do not tell this business of ours, then when the Lord gives us the land, we will deal kindly and faithfully with you. Our lives for yours. And I thought that's interesting that is known as that said in that city, because guess what Jesus is getting ready to do? He's getting ready to go to Jerusalem and give His life for theirs. He's getting ready to go to Jerusalem and give His life for ours. And along the way, the thing that stops Him is people that want to connect. People that want something more. People that want to see 2020. Let's pray. Father, I pray that we would understand these stories were not written just to inform us, but to transform us. That maybe we find ourselves desperate, like the blind man. But we have acknowledged You. We know You as the Son of David, the Son of the Most High. Help us to learn that You are good enough to stop and meet our need and to encourage us. Maybe we have built our lives on our reputation or our job or our bank account. Father, help us to realize that you want to come in. It's not that that's bad, only when we trust it ahead of You. That You want to deliver. You want to deliver us to a life abundant. And Father, maybe we're like the crowd, that what we believe is because people around us believe the same thing, and why buck the system? Help us to be individuals, to realize that individually we will stand before You. Help us with open hearts and open minds regain our sight. For it's in Christ's name I pray. Amen.